Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Business Spotlight. I, of course, am Scott McMeans with Action Coach. I am here today with Lorraine Schuchart from Prosper for Purpose. She has an amazing virtual consulting firm, but she's more than just a consultant. She's a writer, she's a storyteller. So, what I'd like to do is introduce my audience to Lorraine, hand over the camera and the microphone, and have her tell her story as she sees fit. So, Lorraine, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much
And
for having me, Scott. I'm excited.
it's my pleasure. I love telling stories and answering questions or asking questions that get answered so the audience gets a chance to learn something new, pull something out of it that's a nugget that they can do something with. So, with that said, Lorraine, tell us your story.
Oh
Tell
my
us about Prosper for Purpose, how you got to sit in this chair on the other side of a video screen from Scott McMeans.
Yeah, well, Scott, first of all, it was so great to connect with you, and thank you for the opportunity to share my story and a little bit about what I and the team at Prosper for Purpose do. So, basically, I am a accidental or reluctant or whatever you want to call it entrepreneur. I never had any dreams of starting my own business. Really liked working for other organizations, and throughout my career, I went back and forth between nonprofit and for profit work. And I just found that I started out of school working for the American Cancer Society. And I really loved that mission and being able to tell stories that would hopefully help save lives, right? And just really spoke to me. But there wasn't a lot of money in nonprofit work, especially at that time. And then I went and worked for a newspaper, and I was part of an in house copywriting team. And I got to write for Jeep and Nabisco and some major corporations, and it was so fun and felt so cool. And then I relocated and I did freelancing, and then I just kept when I did go back to work, found where I wanted to work again. It was always like I felt like I was on this quest to figure out where I belonged and where I fit. And I had some great experiences on both sides. I led PR for Joanne Fabric and Craft Stores, which is a local beloved brand, for a number of years. And I just had such a variety of experiences. And I finally got to the point where I would feel like I accomplished what I set out to do in about 3 years. And then I'd be looking for where am I being led next, right? Where do I want to go? And it came to a point where I couldn't find that place. And I was at a certain point, my kids were in college, and it was like, what do I want to do now? Like when I grow up, I think that's a question that we should always ask ourselves. And I had been thinking about starting my own consultancy because I'd always done freelance, even when I was fully employed. And then my girls were home from school, and we were having a conversation, and one of them said, "Mom, why don't you just start your own business? Like you know what you want to do." I was like, "Oh, that's what I'd been thinking." So I took it as a sign,
Love it.
and I quit my job. And a month later, my daughter was we ended up traveling as a family. They were both on college break. And then I came home in January, filed the paperwork. And as of January 8th, I had a business. And I just decided I chose Prosper for Purpose because to me, it represents doing good so that you are doing well, prosper so you can do more good, which is the purpose. And I really started working with organizations by talking to them about their purpose. That said, I'd never run a business before. I'd never worked in an independent agency before. I'd worked at in house agencies. So it was really like taking a leap of faith or baptism by fire, whatever you want to call it, into this uncharted waters, right? And when I started explaining what I was setting out to do, nonprofits got it. And so a lot of our early clients were nonprofits. But when I talked to people, even people that I'd formerly worked with that worked in businesses, it was almost like I got a proverbial pat on the head. Oh, that's so nice that you want
Oh,
to, make a difference. And it just kind of strengthened my resolve. And, I'm a figure it out kind of person. I do not shy away from obstacles. I am challenged by them. And it was kind of a like a, okay, we're just gonna figure it out. And it just took a lot of conversation, and I'm a writer, and fine tuning the message on our website. And I built our first website, so I proved that I knew how to, or sorry, that I could learn to do the things I didn't know how to do. And I quickly decided just because I could do something didn't mean that I should do something. And so there's that. You have to be scrappy when you start your business, but you also need to know, like, what are the things that would really free up your time to do what you do best if you
Mhm.
can hand them off. And so I think the first thing I hope I handed off was bookkeeping. And then when we later redid the website, I handed over, I still wrote it. I've written every version of our website, but I handed over the design and the hosting and all of that. Um, so that's kind of how we started. Where we are now is that we really focus, we tell people we help businesses grow peerless, profitable brands. And the reason that's important is I say peerless because your message has to stand out from all your peers. I don't believe in competitors per se. Sure, if somebody gets a client that I
Mhm.
really wanted, like, oh, but we're all, there's enough pie for everyone, right? No one's going to starve. So, but what is unique about me and what is unique about my peers, those are very different things. So if someone thinks that that unique quality of one of my peers is what they want, then that client wasn't for me. And so that's what
Yeah,
I try to help my clients do as well. Like, you are peerless. What are the words that we can best use that articulate that so that your right clients, when they come to your website, when they have a conversation with you, they say, "You are my person." And that's really what we do. We go into the messaging and the foundation, because otherwise, if you don't have your messaging right, you don't have your positioning right, then anything else you do is amplifying something that's broken. And I think that,
interesting.
yeah, I think that's really important.
Well, I think you've nailed a number of different concepts here, Lorraine. And I appreciate you going through your story and in particular defining what peerless means, because if you don't have a unique selling proposition, if you don't stand out from the crowd, you can't identify your value. Therefore, you can't identify what your fees are going to be and how to justify them. So there's a lot of great stuff that you brought here. I want to dive a little bit deeper into Prosper for Purpose as far as what are the type of people that you work with from a internal perspective, like who's on your team and how do you establish that environment? And
Mhm.
then let's branch that out a little bit. So now that we're going to learn about your structure and the environment of what you work with, and then how would you describe the type of people you want to work with? And I'm not asking names, but I'm sure there's clients that you really enjoy working with, and there's clients that are a little bit more challenging. So I'm curious how you set up the environment so you can handle both kinds of clients from an internal perspective because you have the right environment. Does that make sense as far as
Yeah,
the direction I want to
absolutely.
take? Okay.
So culture and
So
values are really important to us. And so you talk about internal team. I set up a process back in 2017, I want to say, where we took our core values and we took kind of our philosophy and what we believed was strong about our culture, and we turned them into interview questions. And then we
nice.
carried that through to our annual, well, they're more than annual, but now my team's been with me so long, they're only annual reviews. And so we really made sure that we were hiring with our values and making sure that someone's values and how they looked at things, because we would give very specific questions within that, aligned with ours. And then how were they doing once they came on? And, that's not all on them. That's also about us. Like, how are we mentoring and helping our team grow in the skills that they need? And going virtual, preserving culture on a virtual basis can be challenging, but I'm really proud that we actually took some employees on during the pandemic, and they were in Michigan and Massachusetts, and they were great and they fit right in. And I think that, we just kept doing this work to get it better. So I think, does that answer your internal question?
It does. And here's the thing that I find interesting. Um, and we have a very similar vernacular, maybe a different word here, there, but a very similar vernacular. And that is, the culture is so important that if you don't nail it, if you don't have it right, you as the owner are going to be chasing people to always constantly get back in line with the culture. But if you nail it and you get it right, people constantly are pushing you to keep moving forward. And that's the value of a very strong culture from the foundational part of your business. And that's something that, from my experience, business owners that we speak to from your consulting group or the work that you do and the business coaching that I do, is it's one of the most underrated parts of starting a business. Everybody's so full of vigor to go get things done that they're not paying attention to how they want things done. And when you roll it back and you go to, this is how we do things here. This is our North Star. This is our value, however you want to say it, but this is how we do things here. And you attract people that want to be a part of that party, as opposed to people that don't fit. They don't want to be a part of that party. So the idea that you incorporate into interview questions, it's a part of your annual review process. You hire to bring the right people in to fit your culture, and that's wonderful. How would you describe, Lorraine, the culture that you have? What are the
It
what are the cultural points that you really drive home?
Yeah, we really drive home that we are, above all, an ethical marketing firm that works with people that about about more than profit. So sure, they want to make money, but they want to make money because they have this impact that they're here to make. And it may be, like you, it may be coaching small business owners because small business runs the economy. And yet the economy is, a little crazy from time to
Yeah.
time. And, for others, we've worked with environmental groups, we've worked with parks, we've worked with educational institutions. So you can see, yes, they need to do well, but they're there for a purpose that goes beyond profit. Those are our ideal clients. And so within our culture, it's really important that we understand that we are also here to we're kind of like, we look at ourselves as the bridge. So we look to create change by being the bridge that helps people who see themselves as the change makers, impact makers, and sometimes they don't, and we have to help them see that, but we help them articulate that and create the kind of messaging that they can take forward, not only from their website, but when they're talking to people and in their own cultures. So we work with them on, from internal to external, depending on where they come to us, where they are. But some of these things, when we take someone through the brand process, which is where we typically start, it's really, part of that is purpose is always first, vision, mission, values. And then we get into how do we incorporate those values into our culture to make sure that they're there and we're solid, so that then when we, kind of take our group of ambassadors, our team, our employees out to the world, we're using our own words. This isn't a
Mhm.
memorization, but we're really taking forth the same messages about what we can do and what we stand for, so that we can attract the people that we're here to serve, right? And so we look at ourselves as that bridge that gets them from this big vision to actually being able to find the people that they can help.
I love the idea of what you've got going on there. And I just wrote a note, words realized through action. And that seems to be what everything you just explained, summarized as quickly as I could. Not because I'm trying to summarize it, I'm trying to get a message or get something out of it that people can realize. To me, it's a lot more than, well, I want people that will do what they say. I get that. And that's a very buzzword-esque type thing. But when you have a vision, a culture, or excuse me, a purpose, a vision, a mission, values that are listed out in your culture, it's really hard to walk away from somebody that has all that and say they don't know what they're doing, or
Right.
they're not on my side. You get attracted to people that share the same values that you do. And when you have that connection, both from the people that work for you and the audience that you work for, it's such a synergistic or such an easy merger of thought process that now you're very comfortable as a working team to come up with new ideas because it's a safe space because you're all working from the same spot. And I love the idea of, and it doesn't have to be a consultant, it doesn't have to be a storyteller or a business coach. It has to be somebody that works on a manufacturing floor or somebody that works in a service industry. As long as you have a central common goal and the core values all kind of circulate around what you're trying to do, everything just seems that much simpler.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well
Excellent.
said.
I appreciate that. And now that we've talked about all the great stuff, I have to ask you about the challenges that you have faced on building this business, the challenges that come across that you have already beaten, and some of the challenges that, oh, I'm still working through those. And again, I want to give the audience a sense of this is what somebody's gone through. That's how they solved it. This is
Mhm.
what somebody's going through. Maybe I can learn from that too. So walk me through some of the biggest challenges or lessons that you've had to learn over the course of the last 13 years of being with this business.
I think one of the challenges, well, lots of challenges because I wasn't a business owner, but one of the challenges that I faced for a very long time was actually around having the right team. And it wasn't that we were necessarily hiring the wrong people, it was
Hmm.
that we weren't always able to understand. I will take responsibility for this. I wasn't always able to understand what is the right mix of people that we need? What is the right mix of personalities, of skill sets, of levels of expertise? What should that look like? And I had this big commitment to helping people get off on the right track in their careers. So I did bring in a lot of interns and several people for whom, I mean, at least five, when I'm looking back now over 11 years, where working at Prosper for Purpose was their very first job because I know how hard it is to get your first
Hmm.
job. And then the ones that left us, um, and at this point, I guess all five of those have moved on, but like they escalated very quickly, and I was very proud of that. However, it wasn't typically good for business. And
Hmm.
so I think, and I don't struggle with who to hire any longer. We're pretty lean and we've kind of figured it out. However, I think that where I still struggle is the impact that I would like to make and what is best for my business. And so
Yeah.
it's like I always have the scales out and I was always like, but I'd really like to do this, or I'd really like to help this person, or I'd really like to help this client. But what is that going to cost my business? And ultimately, I've now made a shift to where if it's not, and I'm not talking about just money, I'm talking about time, which is
Oh
actually the
yeah.
most precious resource. If it isn't good for my business, or if it isn't something that I can completely separate and say this serves my higher purpose, then I don't do it. And that is so hard for me.
It's very hard because your center core, the thing that you started off with, is trying to get something done. And the business or the influences and the challenges that keep coming on, you're trying to fix everything and you can't fix everything. Right.
Right.
I would find it interesting, and I'm not looking for a confirmation, but I want to understand this. Your early experiences and challenges were with hiring the right team. Has that now been solved based on the hiring practices that you currently utilize?
Yes, for
Okay.
where we are right now. Yes, because we over time it was more about we were okay, so this is another issue. And I think that's what I have solved. We were more about what do you need and we'll figure out how to give it to you for many, many years. And so as a result, we grew team. that could bring new skills in. And we would go through a cycle where we needed those skills in house. And then all of a sudden we didn't. We would finish with a client and the next client would come and then the next client would come. And then all of a sudden we didn't have a use for that. Or there were some things that I was doing that weren't really aligned with us any longer. And so how I solved that problem and really helped lock in the team as well was to say, we're scaling back our
Mm.
services and we'll refer you to someone if we know someone, but this is what we do.
Well, and that's a good thing, right? Because now you're able to focus on the things that you're good at, and you let go of the things that you're not good at, but you have good referral partners. There's an old adage that we love to use when we're trying to teach new leaders how to be very good at what they do. And that is simply do something that you're really good at, that you like to do, and it generates revenue. Everything else you have to delegate. Otherwise, you're going to be wrapped around a wheel trying to figure out how to get to the next stop,
Except this
right?
was a big revenue producing thing. And it was something that we had been really good at. And I think that's sometimes the conundrum. And so I
Yeah.
think that it's something that we weigh on an annual basis. Like, okay, this particular thing is making us a lot of money. It's one of the biggest money, not the biggest, but one of the biggest, probably number two money drivers in our business. However, the field has changed, the time it requires has changed, and we've lost some of the passion for that. So it's not good for us to do that any longer. So those
Hmm.
are some of the criteria that we look at as well. Sure, if it's not like if it's design, not in my wheelhouse, I'm going to bring in a designer. I'm never going to try to do design for somebody. But I think it's those gray areas that we as business owners encounter where it's like, well, I am good at this, but I don't love it anymore. Or,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what I'm
Well,
saying?
no, it's a really insightful piece to think about, right? And the other part that doesn't necessarily come in here, because there's plenty of businesses that love to hold on to, well, this generates so much money for us, we have to keep it. And then
Right.
when you dive into the P&L, or you dive into the marketing expenses, you dive into everything attributed to that service, you realize you're doing all that work for all that money, and you're making less than 5% profit, if any of it. Why are
That's
you,
another way to look at it
right?
for sure.
So when you look at your business, and don't get me wrong, you could end up being a lot more profitable by having a lot less top line dollars if you manage your business effectively, but also build a consumer base of clientele that love you because you are the resource that gets them access to the things that you don't do well, but you're connected to.
Yeah,
Just a different thought, just a different way of looking at business. Lorraine, this has been great. We have a lot of information. I've taken a ton of notes, so I appreciate that.
absolutely.
Um, I love the idea that you were vulnerable and you made comment about the things that you had to learn and the challenges that you overcome. So I think people will really take a credence to that. They'll buy into it because that's something they're probably facing themselves. Um, as you know, I'd like to ask one last question. So if you were to sit down on a park bench next to an 18-year-old you, what advice would you give yourself and an 18-year-old vision?
I would say start your business sooner and
Okay.
focus on your storytelling because that's from the time I was a little girl, that's all I wanted to do was tell stories, write stories, not tell stories, but write stories.
I love that. Great answer. And
Thank
you know what's unique about this question, why I ask it. Okay. If you go back and you look at all of the videos that I've done to a person, they've all said something very similar to what you said. Start earlier, follow your passion, don't worry about everybody else.
Yes.
You're not going to fail. Even if you fail, stand up and keep going. That's the common theme that's come from everyone that's answered that question. And I appreciate your contribution because it only proves the point that when you follow your passion, you get a chance to do something for the rest of your life that you get paid for, that you really like to do.
I I
So
couldn't
thank you for
agree
being a
more.
part of that.
Yeah,
Lorraine,
thank you.
is there any, so real quick, is there anything that you want me to link, email, website, email, Instagram, social media on? I'll have all that down here in the description below. So
Yeah,
we'll have that out there.
absolutely. So I would say my website and my LinkedIn for sure.
Okay, we can definitely do that for you. And any closing thoughts from you?
I think my closing thought is that if you really want to start a business, then you should do it. And you should find a mentor and always have a mentor, even though your mentors will change over the course of your career. So you'll have to wear many hats in the beginning, but get get help sooner rather than later.
Love that. Love that. Lorraine, thank you so much for spending time with us on the Business Spotlight. We appreciate it. And everybody else, highly encourage you to visit the website, find out what you can. And when you need to connect with Lorraine, you know how to do so. Thank you so much, Lorraine. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.